It's no secret. Many of us in high performance careers pride ourselves on our work ethic. At first, the late nights, early mornings, and minimal sleep feel exciting and fulfilling. I know I've been there. But as time goes on and we advance further in our careers, we start to realize this approach isn't sustainable, and in fact, it's not even as productive as we once thought. In this episode of Breaking Sales, Pam and I explore the critical importance of rejuvenation and grounding for high achievers and why taking time to recharge isn't just a luxury, it's a necessity for maintaining clarity and avoiding burnout. It's not being lazy. You'll discover how small, intentional habits can make a big difference in your overall well-being and productivity. We'll also discuss the hard choices that come with prioritizing rejuvenation and why being deliberate is so critical to avoiding this burnout. Pam and I even share our own personal methods of mental and physical rejuvenation, from evening walks and classical music to early morning workouts and prioritizing sleep, as inspiration on how you can make a change in your life. Listen to this episode if you're ready to transform your mindset and boost your performance without sacrificing your well-being. It's funny how when we get older, we do start to gain so much more perspective. Case in point, there's probably a 20-year period, Pam, where I was just romantically attached to this idea of never-ending work. Some reason I got it in my head back in the 80s. Now I'm really dating myself, right? That, it was all about working hard, late nights, early mornings, not getting any sleep, right? And I romanticized it. So 20 years, I had no balance, none, and very little downtime. And now when you look at the research and all the studies, they're saying downtime is incredibly important. It's a must. Rejuvenation is a must. And so I look back and think, okay, I missed that boat. Didn't get that one right. But for our listeners, again, it's not about working 90 hours a week. Look, if you have to put in a 90-hour week because it's crunch time, so be it. But at the same time, you do want to try to find some balance. I know people talk about integrating. Quite frankly, I never really captured integrating. I can't just go from a joyful moment, a relaxing moment, to a business moment, back to a joyful moment. I'm not wired like that. So maybe some are. I have to have delineation. So what works for me is up early, get it going, go maybe till 5, 6, 6:30. But then after that, I'll most often shut it off. I may check some emails and stuff, or I might take a break mentally and write an article late night because I've had a 2 or 3 hour break. But for the most part, I have found, at least for me, Pam, that I go hard, don't stop, then I rejuvenate. So I know you and I have been talking about this for a bit. So I'd love for you to share, with the listeners, some of your things that you've come across.
Dan knows this about me, but for you listeners, I'm a big work ethic person. And I was just raised by a man who said, hey, somebody's right behind you who wants it more than you do. And so you've got to prove every single day that you're worth it and that you are an irreplaceable human being to the people who you surround yourself with. And he's like, that comes with a level of a grind. And I was raised that way, and I have a very, very hard time. And Dan knows this is something I work on all the time, is learning that it's okay if you don't work a 90-hour work week. But that's something I struggle with, especially those of us who choose certain careers. That comes with a level of grind that's expected. So I love this topic because I still, again, struggle with, and Dan knows too, I do struggle with the word balance. I do think it's more, hey, you've got one life, you've got 16 hours a day, assuming you sleep 8, and we all have the same 16 hours, and you get to choose what that 16 hours looks like.
I want to take a moment to backtrack. The reason why Pam and I brought this topic up is because, right, you get up in the morning, and for many of our listeners, what are you facing during the day? You are facing a day of putting yourself out there. Whether it's putting yourself out there because you're trying to meet new people through email, through conferences, through phone calls, whether it's putting yourself out there because you're going to go have a lunch or you're going to have a cup of coffee with someone new, right? But it doesn't stop there. You also put yourself out there when you start thinking about the conversations that you're having. What risks are you going to take in those conversations? Are you willing to ask those tough questions that do cause a little tension, right? Are you willing to make those observations that can cause a little tension? Again, your day as a high performer is full of moments of putting yourself out there. And so that is a giant mental game. And so rejuvenation, getting yourself grounded are such an important part of that. And that day, Pam and I know, we experienced it. I mean, for yesterday, I had 9 calls yesterday. I went from 8 in the morning all the way till 6 p.m. at night on 9 different calls. Pam, that's your day all the time. I have the same thing today. And you got to be crisp. You got to have clarity. You got to be mentally strong, aware. And so that's why this topic is so important, because we all know what it's like to have to grind through those days. And sometimes I get it. It feels like a victory because you made it through the day. And I understand that. I've had those days too. But it's not really what it's about, right? It's not just about making it through the day. It's about being at peak performance throughout the day.
I like how Dan is using the word rejuvenate. I do think of rejuvenation very different than like grounding yourself. I think of rejuvenation, to renew yourself, revitalize yourself, both mentally and physically. And Dan, that's kind of how I break it down. I look at rejuvenation in 2 categories, mental and physical.
Before we go there, Pam, I think it's important, right? Grounding and rejuvenate. I just want to get this clear for our listeners. Grounding is when I take a moment between calls and I'll do maybe some breathing for 4 minutes, the 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. That's grounding. Grounding for me might be actually stepping outside onto back deck, back patio, and just taking in the beauty of the surroundings. But I'm stepping away for a few minutes to ground myself. But I don't consider that rejuvenating.
Also, those of you that know LAP and 180, we experiment with a lot of different things. We work processes, we do 12 weeks, and we experiment every 12 weeks with some different elements of the topics we discuss. And so rejuvenation is something I experiment with a lot. But I'll tell you what, I have really found my rhythm, both mentally and physically right now. And we talk about this, Dan, this stuff evolves. And as your life changes and you age, the way you rejuvenate will change. But right now, I'll tell you what, I feel like from where I am in my life, I've got this piece figured out for myself right now. I kind of look at this in two different ways. Daily mental and physical rejuvenation, and then more like long-term mental and physical rejuvenation. So I feel like every day I need an element of revitalizing myself every day, because we do run hard. So every day I need an element of this. So mentally, oh my goodness, this is what I have found absolutely allows me to rejuvenate mentally. 2 things. Number 1, being outside. And for whatever reason, it's not just being outside, it's being outside in the evening. So I'm a big fan of when I travel, I stay close to a hotel where my client is so I can walk. I can walk to and from work. For whatever reason now, at night, whether it's after my work day or whether it's after I've eaten some dinner, I go outside. And I just go find a place somewhere. Like last night, I went to McIntyre Park here in downtown Dallas. I saw this pretty area with trees and some lights, and I just go. And for 15 minutes, I just sit there and I look around, and it's just unbelievable. So I have a friend, Dan. She and I both just go very hard all the time. And we read this book called The Joy Diet. And one of the concepts in the Joy Diet for mental rejuvenation is called 15 minutes of nothing time, where you just do absolutely nothing for 15 minutes. And it was great for a while. But then I started to notice when I would do my 15 minutes of nothing time outside, there was something about being outside during my nothing time and in the evening that really took it to a whole nother level for me. Dan, I can't explain it, but when I go outside, just find a place, sit, no phone, no anything, just sit and take in the surroundings. It mentally rejuvenates me like nothing else. I've experimented with mornings and Ubers, all of it. And this by far is a game changer. I don't know what it is about it. Maybe it's because I've gone fast all day, but being outside and doing it at night has made the biggest difference from me from a mental rejuvenation standpoint than anything else I've ever tried over the years. It's amazing. And it's amazing too. All I need is 15 minutes. All I need is 15 minutes.
How do you know you only need 15? So, because I know we're all different. I'm just curious about how you came to that conclusion that 15 was really working well for you.
I'm an anxious person. I don't sit still well. I think in the book, she even recommends 30 minutes a day of nothing time. And I couldn't do it. To your point, Dan, I do think everybody's different with this, but I've got to start being okay with how I'm wired. John works with me on that, my coach, and I'm not wired to sit still for 30 minutes. It actually causes me, I think, more mental distress than anything. So the 15 minutes is ideal for me. I don't get anxious. I don't start thinking about, okay, it's been 20 minutes there. It's the perfect amount of time where I just feel mentally refreshed. And the nighttime has been key too. And I don't know what it is about the evening time, but there's something about the nighttime for me that really makes a difference as well. But I see what you're saying, and I'm guessing that some people could probably go longer than 15 minutes without getting anxious, but I'm not one of them.
So for you, it's the anxiousness. So like when you start to feel like, hey, what else should I be doing? What else do I have to get done? Where's my list? Maybe I need to get back to my list of priorities or non-negotiables or whatever it might be. As soon as those thoughts start to kind of rotate through your brain, that's when you know, okay.
Yep, it's time. And it's amazing. Even last night when I landed, and it just makes me feel completely renewed mentally. It's like all the baggage gets out of my head from the day, and it's amazing.
I know for me, it's physical activity that's helpful to me. If I just release physical activity through whatever way, could be a long walk, could be literally hitting golf balls. It used to be playing hockey. That was a big thing for me. Like I'd have a nice release getting on the ice. It's working out. Is there a physical part for you?
So absolutely. So physical. So my mental, be in nature. And at night, the 15 minutes. My other mental component is classical music. Classical music is another piece that I'll do. I do that one in the morning when I'm getting ready. Having classical music on in the background when I'm getting ready also makes me feel like I'm getting my head prepped for the day. And again, it's different than that grounding. It's just kind of clearing out the cobwebs, like after the exercise in the morning. But the other piece for me is definitely that classical music in the mental category. So those are my two big things to mentally rejuvenate: the outside and the classical music.
Don't forget the Christmas music, because I know that works for you as well.
The day after Thanksgiving until the day after Christmas, nothing is allowed to be played other than holiday music. Period. End of story.
I know that, Pam.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. So now you talked about the physical rejuvenation. So in that category, I actually have 3 things that I focus on: sleep, exercise, and believe it or not, the third one is water. So to your point, Dan, I think we both are huge advocates of morning workouts. I've experimented with this one too, it's why, again, I just got done working out this morning before we recorded this podcast. The physical rejuvenation does come in the morning with me through exercise. Specifically, the hit workouts. So the real intense followed by the down, real intense also seems to do more from a rejuvenation standpoint for me than the long distance running or the long walks. I do those too, but for some reason, the rejuvenation on the hits are really compelling for me. And then obviously sleep. I think you and I have both experimented with this, but my physical rejuvenation comes when I go to bed very early and I get up very early. That seems to be the winning combination for me. And you and I both can't do that all the time due to our travel, but when I can, that's how I physically renew myself, being in bed by 9 p.m. and being up at 5 a.m.
Yeah, the sleep is huge. I never really paid much attention to it, but as you know, Pam, I've had this Whoop for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And you say I'm a little addicted to it, but when I get up in the morning, the first thing I actually do is I get the app off my phone and I look at it and I want to see how much deep I had, how much REM I had, and what my recovery is and what my heart rate variability is, because all of those things contribute to rejuvenation. The higher the heart rate variability, the physically more healthier you are. And the better the REM you have and the better the deep you have, the combination of hopefully getting to at least 35% of your sleep, the more recovered you are. And then I love how they have the green or the yellow or the red that tells you your recovery. Because it's so true. And everybody here who's listening, we all have different patterns. I drive my wife crazy now because I am literally in bed most nights when I can, sometime around 9 p.m. Literally. That's just how I'm wired now. And I'm going to get up, get that workout in, because once the workout's over in the morning, I feel this surge of energy. And I actually feel this surge of clarity up here.
I think about things very, very differently than the majority of the people on the subject. But I feel like this subject of burnout that I'm hearing about all the time is because we're not being purposeful about rejuvenation. I don't feel burnt out. I don't. But I have to be very deliberate to ensure that I can go every day like this and not feel burnt out.
Pam, I think for a majority of our listeners, burnout is self-induced. It happens over a period of time. It's not just one night or 2 nights or 3 nights. It's the culmination of several weeks of what are your patterns? What are your routines? How are you spending your evenings? How are you spending your weekends? And I get it. Listen, for many of you, you work hard. Yes, you're right. You should go enjoy it. That's what life is about. But I agree, Pam, in general, I think burnout is because it's been more self-induced.
That's what we're trying to avoid, but that takes hard work, just as much hard work as working hard throughout the day to make sure you don't burn out and you can continue to enjoy the pace in which you run, both business-wise and personally.
I also think, and this is very important to mention, it's about choices. And the choices are, if you're going to put yourself in a position for peak performance because you're getting the sleep or you're going for the walk or you're getting up in the morning and going to the gym, right? If you're thinking about the sleeping and the breathing and all of those things, right? A lot of that stuff is individual time. And so you have to make a choice. Do you spend your time working on yourself individually, or do you spend your time socially? It can't be both sometimes. And you have to make the hard decisions. So I do think sometimes there is a loneliness that can occur when you're trying to lead more of a lifestyle that's bringing out your peak performance, because not everybody's going to follow you. Not everybody's going to do it. Not everybody's going to connect with you and assimilate what you're doing. There's an individuality to it and a little bit of a solo-ness to it, or a little bit of a lone wolf to it. And I've been there, trust me, many times. But again, balance. I hate using the word, but is there times where you can do that and still get some social interactions?
I like your word choices better than balance. I like choices.
Balance has always been vague to me because I don't really ever think I understand it. I understand choices. And I don't understand integration. I don't. I have to admit, because I think I've tried to do that, and I'm like, I can't bounce back and forth between stuff. Maybe some of our listeners can, and that might be true. I can't. It just doesn't work for me, bouncing back and forth between this activity, that activity, this project, this, or that. Just no, I can't do it. But the key thing is, I think Pam and I wanted to talk about is that it's a journey too, right? It's a journey in your choices. It's a journey in how you experiment. It's a journey on what you expect from yourself. It's never a destination. It's not a finish line in any of this. And I think that's the other thing people have to try to back off of, is that no one's going to cross the finish line on it. It just doesn't happen. As we conclude this episode, think about the choices you're making each day. Are they leading you towards burnout, or are they actually productive and helping you bring out your best? No matter what method you use, the key is to be intentional. By being purposeful about rejuvenation, you'll discover that sustained high performance isn't just about how hard you work, but also how well and often you recover. I hope this discussion has given you a fresh perspective on work-life balance and the importance of downtime. If you enjoyed this episode, you can follow us on your preferred streaming platform. And if you choose, leave a review. You have many options to listen to. We appreciate the time that you spend with us, and we would value your feedback on Apple Podcasts.